68 years and I've never needed a fence around my property. The land speaks for itself. The deep ruts on the dirt roads, the weathered wooden barns, my grandfather's plough, everything here bears my mark. When the sun rises over the 150 acres that have carried my family's name for 4 generations, I feel both the weight of responsibility and the comfort of deep roots in this soil. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this. My routine is simple and predictable. I wake up before dawn, tend to the few animals I still keep, check on the seasonal crops in the eastern field, and sometimes repair a fence or some equipment. My calloused hands aren't as strong as they used to be, but they know every inch of this land. My closest neighbors live almost 2 kilometers away, and that never bothered me. Solitude has its own kind of company. It was on an ordinary Tuesday that I noticed a formal envelope among my mail. Thick paper, a golden logo in the corner, Real Estate Developments Association. Inside was a letter printed on letterhead and signed by someone named Victoria Masters, CEO. It talked about regional development, real estate appreciation, and an exclusive resort that would transform our underused region into a luxury tourist hub. At the end, the invitation, they would consider it an honor to have my property as part of the project, offering a generous financial compensation. I folded the letter and put it in the dresser drawer. I didn't even have to think about it. The next day, I sent a brief thank you note declining the offer. I thought that would be the end of it. 3 weeks later, I received another envelope, thicker, with colorful designs, graphs showing appreciation, and a new letter. Maybe we didn't explain the benefits clearly enough, it said. The offer had doubled. The following month, another letter arrived, this time suggesting that I keep a portion of the land by giving up only the southern part that borders the lake. I replied the same way, politely but firmly. I wasn't interested. The fourth letter mentioned community responsibility and how my resistance could harm local economic development. The tone had changed. It wasn't an invitation anymore, but more like a suggestion that I was being selfish. I decided not to reply this time. A few days later, I heard tires on the access road. A shiny black car, looking very out of place in that rural setting, parked near the porch. A woman, about 35 years old, stepped out first. Her hair was perfectly styled and she wore a flawless suit with shoes that looked way too expensive for walking on the hard-packed dirt of my property. A burly man got out from the driver's side and stood by the car, arms folded and eyes alert. The woman walked over with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mr. Oliver? I'm Victoria Masters, from the AEI. I've tried to contact you several times. I thought a face-to-face conversation might be more productive." I offered her some coffee out of courtesy, even though I already knew why she was here. In the kitchen, Victoria opened a folder with documents, maps, and a golden pen. "Our company values historic properties like yours. But we have to be practical. This region is developing. The resort we're planning will bring jobs, tourism, and progress. Your land is vital to our project because of its access to the lake." I listened in silence as she laid out ever bigger numbers. When she finished, I set my cup down on the table. "Ms. Masters, thank you for your time, but as I've already said, this land is not for sale. Neither in part nor in full." Her smile faltered for a moment. "Mr. Oliver, I understand your emotional attachment, but we're talking about an offer well above market value. Age is catching up, and managing a property this size on your own, it must be exhausting. It's my home. Not just a piece of land or an investment." I noticed something change in her eyes. A cold, calculated look replaced her fake sympathy. "I hope you reconsider. It'd be a shame to see this property deteriorate simply because of stubbornness." She got up. "I'll leave these documents in case you change your mind." After she left, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, an uneasy feeling. The veiled threats hung in the air like storm clouds. The next week, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked on the main road for hours. Days later, a city inspector showed up saying he had received reports of possible structural irregularities. I checked his credentials carefully, everything looked legitimate, but the coincidence was disturbing. I called Alexander Carter, my lawyer and longtime friend. At 55, Alex had known my family since he was an intern at his dad's law office. This doesn't seem like a coincidence, Oliver. I'll look into AEI and find out what they're up to. That night, I heard a buzzing sound above the house. Picking up my flashlight, I spotted a drone hovering over the property, its red light blinking in the dark. It was clearly not by chance, it was methodically mapping my land. The drone's buzz continued as I walked around the property. The feeling of intrusion grew with every second. This wasn't just some teenager fooling around, its flight pattern was too systematic. I went into the shed, grabbed my old air rifle, and headed back to the backyard. I didn't need perfect aim. A single, well-placed shot took out one of the propellers, throwing the drone off balance so it spiraled down and landed near the creek that runs through my property. I walked over, using my flashlight to light the way. The drone was sophisticated, with a high-resolution camera and a small compartment that held a device resembling a GPS. I wrapped it in a cloth and carefully put it away. I didn't sleep that night. Victoria's words kept echoing in my mind, it'd be a shame to see this property deteriorate simply because of stubbornness. The tone left no doubt, it wasn't just an observation, it was a threat. The next morning, I called Alex again and told him about the drone. Don't touch anything else, Oliver. I'm sending Detective Rodriguez over right now. We need to document all of this officially, he said. Detective Carlos Rodriguez arrived 2 hours later. At 42, he had a keen look and a calm demeanor. He examined the damaged drone with interest, took photos from every angle, and collected fingerprints from it. Mr. Oliver, this isn't amateur equipment. It has a serial number, and we can trace its origin. He made some notes. It invaded your property during the night and clearly violated your privacy. I'm taking this as evidence. Do you think this is related to AEI? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. I can't say for sure yet, but there's a pattern in cases like yours. First come friendly approaches, then increasing pressure, followed by intimidation when the initial tactics fail. He put his notepad away. I recommend you install security cameras. I can suggest a simple system that works well in rural areas. After the detective left, I walked along the property's borders. Every tree, every rock, every bend of the creek was as familiar as the lines on my own hand. My father used to say our family didn't really own this land, we were its temporary guardians. That responsibility had been passed down for generations, a silent testament to our values. It wasn't just about the property, but about what it represented. The cameras were installed the next day. Alex insisted on paying for the system, calling it an investment in evidence. 2 cameras were set up at the main entrance, one covering the barn, and another near the house. The technician who installed them even looked a bit worried. Do you live here alone? Maybe it'd be good to have someone around for a few days, he said. I've been living alone since my wife passed away, son. I'm not going to change my habits because of intimidation, I answered. For 3 days, nothing happened. On the 4th morning, I got a call from Alex. Oliver, the police have tracked the drone. It was bought by AEI 2 months ago. We have direct evidence now. What does that mean, exactly? It means we can file a lawsuit for invasion of privacy, illegal surveillance, and attempted intimidation. I'm already preparing the documents. A small victory, I thought. But something told me this was only the beginning of a bigger battle. That afternoon, as I worked in the eastern field planting a new row of corn, hard work always helped me think, I noticed an envelope taped to the door on my way home. No logo this time, just my typed name. Inside was a short message, last chance. Accept our offer by tomorrow or face the consequences. I took a picture of the note and immediately sent it to Alex and Detective Rodriguez. Moments later, Rodriguez called. Mr. Oliver, this is an explicit threat. I'm sending a patrol car to your area tonight. Don't open the door for anyone. The night passed without incident. The next day, Alex arrived early with papers and a serious look on his face. I looked into AEI further. Victoria Masters has quite an interesting background. Before founding the association, she worked for 3 different developers that ended up in lawsuits over dubious practices. She was never directly implicated, but her name appears on the edges of every case. And what did you find out about AEI? I asked. It was founded just 2 years ago and has grown meteoric. They acquired land in 3 neighboring counties, always following the same pattern. They approach small landowners in areas with tourism potential, start with generous offers and, well, you know the rest of the process. While we were discussing the next legal steps, the security system's alert went off. A black car was entering the property, the same one that had brought Victoria on her first visit. This time, however, there was another vehicle behind it, a pickup truck with tinted windows. Call Rodriguez right now, Alex said as he grabbed my old cell phone to record what was happening. Mr. Oliver, your stubbornness is costing many people time and money. I'm here to get your signature on these documents. She gestured, and the man with the folder stepped forward. I'm not leaving here without it. Ms. Masters, you are trespassing on private property. I ask that you leave immediately, I said. You really don't understand the situation you're in, do you? You think your little stunts with the local police are going to stop us? You took down our equipment, made baseless accusations, those actions have consequences, she replied. The 2 men from the pickup began positioning themselves, one on each side, in a clearly coordinated move to surround me. I'm recording all of this, I warned, raising my cell phone. And my lawyer is on the phone with the police right now. Victoria looked at Alex, who was visible through the window, then turned her eyes back to me with an expression that mixed anger and disdain. How touching. The old farmer and his trusty lawyer against the world. She snapped her fingers and the 2 men advanced toward me. Unfortunately for you, the real world works differently. Security, bring him here. If he resists, use moderate force. You're committing a crime, Victoria. Trespassing, issuing threats, and attempting coercion, I said. One of the men climbed the porch steps. He was almost a head taller than me and looked like he weighed twice as much. No resistance, old man. We don't want to hurt you, he said. Alex appeared at the door still holding his phone. The police are on their way, Masters. You have at most 5 minutes to leave before you're arrested, he said. 5 minutes is more than enough, Victoria sneered. She turned to the men. Take him to the pickup truck. We need to have this conversation somewhere more private. The man grabbed my arm tightly. I tried to pull away, but his grip was like steel handcuffs. The other henchman advanced toward Alex, who retreated into the house. Last chance, Victoria, Alex shouted through the window. Detective Rodriguez is on the line. He's hearing everything. Victoria hesitated for a second, then her face hardened with renewed determination. He'll never get here in time. And afterwards, we'll deny everything, it'll just be the word of 2 old men against ours. At that moment, I heard tires screeching on the access road. Siren lights flashed off the windows, pulsing blue and red over the scene. Victoria paled. The man holding my arm loosened his grip, looking uncertain. At least take the documents. Victoria hissed. 2 police cars sped in, followed by a larger patrol vehicle. Detective Rodriguez jumped from the first car even before it came to a complete stop, gun drawn. Police? Everyone get on the ground, now. Hands where I can see them. The man who had been holding me let go and raised his hands. The other one, near Alex, tried to run for the pickup, but was intercepted by 2 officers who pinned him down to the ground. Victoria stood still, watching the scene in disbelief. Victoria Masters, announced Rodriguez as he approached her, you are under arrest for trespassing, attempted kidnapping, threats, and conspiracy. While reciting her rights, he added quietly, the security cameras captured everything, miss. And we have the drone as evidence of prior stalking. This time, you don't get away." The officers handcuffed Victoria and her men, putting them into separate patrol vehicles. 2 officers stayed behind to collect statements and evidence. Alex put his arm around my shoulders, a rare gesture between us. "Are you okay, Oliver?" he asked. I nodded, watching the police cars drive away. They really were going to take us. But they didn't. "And now we have all the evidence we need," Alex said. Detective Rodriguez returned after dispatching the vehicles, his usually impassive face now showing a tight satisfaction. "Mr. Oliver, Mr. Carter, we need your formal statements. But I want you to know, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We found documents in their possession, including forged title deed templates for your property, Mr. Oliver. It seems they were preparing a plan B in case you kept resisting." I sat down in the porch chair, suddenly exhausted. It wasn't just the physical confrontation, it was the weight of realizing what could have happened. How far these people were willing to go for a piece of land. "What happens now?" I asked. Rodriguez put his notepad away. "Now we're launching a full investigation into AEI. With the preliminary evidence we have, we've already obtained warrants for their offices and financial records. As for you, Mr. Oliver, I suggest you get some rest. But you can sleep easy tonight. I'll have a patrol car stationed at your entrance until we're sure there are no more threats." As the sun began to set over my property, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. The peace that had always characterized this land had been temporarily disturbed, but I also felt a renewed certainty. This land is mine, not only by legal right, but through all the love and work my family has invested here for generations. And no one will ever take that away from me. The following days passed in a whirlwind. My farm, usually a tranquil refuge, became the center of a police investigation. Forensic technicians mapped the area where Victoria and her men had approached me, collecting fingerprints and other traces. The security cameras that Alex insisted on installing proved to be our ace in the hole. They captured every moment of the confrontation in high definition, including the explicit threats and the attempted kidnapping. Detective Rodriguez came by almost every day with updates and additional questions. 1 week after the incident, he arrived with a different expression, more serious, yet with a glimmer of satisfaction in his eyes. "Mr. Oliver, the search warrants for AEI's offices yielded more than we expected." He opened his folder on the kitchen table. "We found an entire file dedicated to your property, aerial photos, old blueprints, soil and water analyses, feasibility studies for the resort, and forged documents." "Forged?" I asked. "Yes. They had prepared a fraudulent version of your land deed with your signature forged. Additionally, we found emails discussing how to convince you to sell, using increasingly aggressive methods." Rodriguez flipped through some papers. In one email exchange, Victoria explicitly mentions that the Plan B involved creating a situation that would leave you with no choice. Alex, who had arrived shortly before for our weekly meeting, leaned in to look at the documents. "Carlos, this goes beyond attempted coercion. We're talking about a conspiracy for fraud, forgery, and systematic intimidation. And there's more," Rodriguez continued. "The financial investigation revealed that AEI wasn't exactly what it appeared to be. Although it presented itself as a legitimate real estate development association, in reality it operated more like a scheme to buy valuable properties at low prices, sometimes through illicit means, and then resell them to big developers for exorbitant profits." I got up to serve more coffee, trying to process all that information. In my 68 years, I never imagined I'd be caught up in something like this. I had spent my life working the land, watching the seasons change, raising animals. And suddenly, I found myself at the center of a criminal operation. "And what about Victoria?" I asked. "She's still held. The judge denied bail due to the severity of the charges and the flight risk. Her lawyers are trying to negotiate, but the prosecutor's office is unyielding. With the evidence we have, she faces serious federal charges." Alex closed his laptop. "The prosecutor wants us to testify next week, Oliver. As key witnesses, our testimonies will be crucial," he said. That night, I slept better than I had in days. The patrol car that had been parked permanently at my entrance was finally removed since Victoria and her accomplices were in custody. Even so, before I went to bed I double-checked that all the doors were locked, a new habit I had picked up since the incident. The next morning, the phone rang as I was making coffee. It was the town mayor, Thomas Wilson, someone I only knew from occasional community events. "Oliver, what a terrible situation. I just got word about all this with AEI. I want you to know that the town is completely on your side with this matter," he said. "Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate the support. Actually," he continued, "I'm also calling because some troubling revelations have come to light. It seems AEI made significant contributions to some municipal projects over the last few months. Nothing illegal on its own, but that buys them influence," I finished. "Exactly. And some city employees may have facilitated certain inspections on your property at their request." He paused. "I'm conducting an internal investigation. I want to clear the town hall of any involvement in this matter." After hanging up, I reflected on how AEI's influence had spread like a spider's web throughout the community. The surprise inspections based on anonymous tips made more sense now. It wasn't just Victoria and her goons, it was an entire system designed to pressure people like me. 2 weeks later, Alex picked me up so we could go to court. It was the first day of the preliminary hearing, where the judge would decide whether there was enough evidence to move forward with the case. The courtroom was packed with reporters. The story of the old farmer versus the real estate corporation had gained national attention. "Don't talk to the press," Alex advised as we climbed the courthouse steps. "Let the prosecutor control the legal narrative." Inside the courtroom, I saw Victoria for the first time since the kidnapping attempt. Seated next to her lawyers, she wore a sober suit that was a far cry from her earlier arrogant attitude. Our eyes met for a moment, and she quickly looked away. Judge Hernandez, a middle-aged man with a stern expression, started the session on time. The federal prosecutor, Ms. Patel, presented the formal charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery of documents, coercion, attempted kidnapping, trespassing, and various financial crimes uncovered during the investigation. "Your Honor, the evidence shows a systematic pattern of criminal activity orchestrated by the defendant, Victoria Masters, and her organization. This is not an isolated incident but a meticulously planned operation to pressure, intimidate, and eventually strip citizens of their legitimate properties," Patel argued. Victoria's lawyer, a well-dressed man in an impeccable suit, tried to downplay the charges. He described the incident as a misunderstanding and argued that the financial charges should be handled separately. Judge Hernandez seemed unmoved by the defense's argument. He said, "Mr. Reynolds, we have video recordings of the events, testimony from multiple witnesses, forged documents found in your client's offices, and a trail of emails detailing the intent to coerce and defraud. I can hardly call this a misunderstanding." When it was my turn to testify, I felt the full weight of the situation. I described the events exactly as they happened, from the first letters to the attempted kidnapping. As I spoke, I watched the jury's faces, expressions of outrage and sympathy passed back and forth. Victoria kept her eyes fixed on the table, avoiding any eye contact. During cross-examination, the defense tried to discredit me, suggesting that I must have misunderstood Victoria's intentions and exaggerated things because of my age. "Sir, Oliver, is it possible that, at 68 years old, with the stress of managing such a large property on your own, you might have misinterpreted the situation?" they asked. I kept my cool and looked directly at the jury. "I am 68. I manage 150 acres by myself. And exactly because of that, I've learned to evaluate situations and people clearly. When someone comes at you with the intention of forcing you, there isn't much room for misinterpretation." Alex's testimony supported my version, adding legal details about AEI's previous attempts to pressure other property owners in similar situations. Detective Rodriguez presented both physical and digital evidence, including the security camera recordings and the documents gathered from AEI's offices. The trial went on for 3 weeks. Every day, new revelations emerged about AEI's activities. Former employees testified about questionable practices, financial documents revealed misappropriation of funds, and other rural property owners shared stories much like mine, although most had given in before things escalated as far as they did for me. On the second to last day, Victoria finally took the witness stand. Her approach had completely changed. She now presented herself as an ambitious executive who may have gone too far in her pursuit of results, though she claimed she never intended real harm. "I made mistakes in judgment," she said to the jury in a controlled voice. "The pressure for results, the expectations of investors. I'm not trying to excuse myself, just explain how a dedicated professional can sometimes lose perspective." Ms. Patel, the prosecutor, was relentless during her cross-examination. "Ms. Masters, do you really call losing perspective the act of forging documents, trespassing on private property, and attempting to kidnap an elderly citizen?" she asked. On the final day, after closing arguments, the jury retired to deliberate. They came back in under 4 hours, a sign, as Alex explained, that usually favored the prosecution. When Judge Hernandez returned to the courtroom, total silence filled the room. In the case of the United States versus Victoria Masters, the jury reached a unanimous verdict, announced the bailiff. Guilty on all counts. Victoria remained still, but her shoulders visibly slumped. The judge set the sentencing for the following week and again denied any possibility of bail. In the sentencing hearing, Judge Hernandez showed no leniency. "Ms. Masters, your crimes were not only against Mr. Oliver but against public trust. You attempted to use your position and resources to subdue a citizen who simply wanted to keep what rightfully belonged to him. The sentence was harsh, 20 years in federal prison for the combined crimes, along with hefty fines and a personal settlement to me totaling over $2 million. AEI was completely dissolved, its assets frozen and later liquidated to pay the damages to all the victims identified in the investigation. As we left the courthouse for the last time, reporters swarmed around us again. Alex guided me away from the cameras, but this time I stopped. "Mr. Oliver, how do you feel about the outcome of the trial?" a reporter shouted. I looked at Alex, who nodded discreetly. "Justice has been served," I replied simply. "Not just for me, but for everyone who has faced similar situations. This land has belonged to my family for generations and will continue to do so for generations to come." Later that afternoon, back at the farm, I walked every inch of the property like I do every day, but with a different feeling. The barn needed a new roof, the northern fence was starting to give way, the old tractor needed maintenance before the next planting. These everyday problems now felt almost comforting. I sat on the porch to watch the sunset, a cup of coffee in my hand. The land stretched out before me, either fields, the small grove on the far west, and the lake to the south that Victoria so coveted for her resort. Everything was still there, unshaken by the storm that had passed. Alex showed up at the property the next day, holding an envelope. "The first documents for your settlement," he explained as he sat next to me on the porch. "You now have more than enough resources to hire help for the farm, or even to sell it and move to Florida?" I finished with a smile. "That was never in the plans, Alex." "I know," he replied with a smile. "Actually, I wanted to suggest something different. Have you ever thought about permanently protecting this land?" "What do you mean?" I asked. "A private environmental reserve. You keep the property, continue living and working here, but legally establish that it will never be commercially developed, even after, well, you know." I considered the idea, watching the treetops sway gently in the afternoon breeze. This land has endured for generations. With the right legal setup, it could remain this way indefinitely, not just my home, but a living testament to resistance against greed and unchecked development. Let's do it, I decided. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this.